Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at a reprint slash design almost, not really, but some changes of one of my favorite games, and that game is Brass, now called Brass Lancashire. So this is the same as the old title Brass from Martin Wallace, although there have been some minor gameplay changes and just a ridiculous amount of updating to components and art. I'm not going to talk too much about it here in the intro. I also recommend that you go back and check out my old review of the game because it's probably better than this one. But if you want to see the new components, and you want to hear me talk a little bit about the game in general, you can certainly watch the video, and we'll come back here at the end and get my opinions on this reprint of Brass. So here we are, all set up for a game of Brass Lancashire. Now, this is a remake of the old game Brass with, as you can see, just much better production value. Old game from Tree Frog Games, Martin Wallace, obviously the designer of both. But the old game from Tree Frog Games, just kind of a bland looking board, not real appealing to the eye, and this one does a much better job, as you can see, of having wonderful artwork on the board. It may be a little dark for the video, but it really does show up quite well in person. Now, this is a game about building a network of textile and coal and iron in England, or in the UK, I should say, I guess, probably. In the 1700s to 1800s. And the idea here is that each player is running a company trying to do their best in order to build out on this map to earn money by the end of the game, and money is essentially victory points. Now, how are they going to do that? Well, each round, the players are going to have 8 cards at the start of their turn. There are 2 eras in this game, a canal era where you'll be building canals, and then a rail era where you'll be building rails, which are on the other side of the canals. And on a player's turn, they're going to have 8 cards from this deck of cards right here. And they are going to play 2 cards, do 2 actions, and then draw up 2 cards from this deck of cards here. So everybody is essentially going to start and end their turn with 8 cards until you can no longer draw from the deck, and there's a divider placed at the bottom here to tell you when the round is almost over. Once you hit that, no more drawing happens, and you just play out the remainder of your 8 cards until you have no cards left. So pretty easy to keep track of the eras. Now, in a round or in a player's turn, a player is going to play 2 of these cards in order to take actions out on this board. Those actions can be many things. So as you'll see, nobody starts on the board. Your first thing you're going to want to do on the board is to place something out there, and there are different types of industry you can build using these cards. These cards here are of many different types. So this one here depicts a shipyard. If we go to the next one here, we have the Liverpool card, and it's going to be in this purplish or reddish color, so that tells us Liverpool is down here with those light colors. Or we may have something like a coal card. So each one of these different cards lets us do different things. The Liverpool card, for example, gives us the right to build into Liverpool whether or not we've started a network. Whereas something like a shipyard or a port card is going to let us build a port somewhere where a port can be built, but we must already be in that network to do so, meaning we've built a canal in, or in future in the game, you've already got another industry there. So on your turn, you're going to, as I said, play a card and take an action, and there are 5 different actions you can take with your cards. The first is you may build some type of industry. So for example, I could play my Liverpool card, just put it in a discard pile over here, and that will let me build any of these industries in Liverpool. So if I decided I wanted to start off with some docks or with a shipyard, this would be a good place to start. Not wonderful at the beginning of the game, so maybe I decide to do this here, and I have no idea how to pronounce this, we'll go Wigan. You know, all of you people from the UK, I apologize for my pronunciation, but maybe I want to build here and I want to build this coal. Now we'll see each player also has their own board over here. And on this board they have different industries. The industries start from the bottom up, so you'll see the level 1 cotton is here, 2, 3, 4, and you must build or get rid of all of a level 1 building before you can build 2, and so forth and so on. The cost to build these items is printed right next to them. So for example, if I want to build my level 1 coal, it's going to cost me $5 from my money that I have here, and maybe I decide to spend that. I put it on the picture of my player, and I'm going to build this coal here. Now when I build this, it's going to come out here because I've played the card for it. I'm going to pay my $5, and it's going to come out with 2 coal on it. Now these are coal that other players will use throughout the game, or perhaps I'll use throughout the game, in addition to distant coal that can be purchased if you're connected to a dock. So more about using that later. You can also build industries like iron, shipyards, ports, and cotton, and each one of those has a different use. So coal will supply resources for building different buildings, but also potentially for building rails later in the game. And canals also cost coal. Iron is needed for certain buildings and will be needed anytime that you decide to build later in the game. So you'll see here, for example, shipyards later in the game require iron. So do the coal buildings require iron later in the game, as do cotton mills. Shipyards here are strictly points. When you build them, they're going to automatically give you points. More on that later. The ports here are going to be used for selling and getting resources from the distant market. So cotton in this game is a main resource, and you're going to be selling cotton for victory points, and it must always be sold to a port or to the distant market, which is right here. Anytime you sell to the distant market, you're going to flip one of these tiles and the market will be adjusted appropriately. We'll see now that the market goes down by 1, and the resources that we sell are going to generate 3 money for us. So we can sell as many cotton during a sell action as we want, so long as we have it, and generate cotton for it, or money for it appropriately. Now, the last thing we have here is, of course, the cotton mills, so you'll build those. And when you build these, you're going to be placing a resource out on the board that you can later sell to the ports or distant market, just as we discussed. This distant market will also provide us with access to iron and coal should there be none from the players on the board. So when you need to build something, if there's none available on the board, and you're connected to any one of these symbols, which you can see are out on the board in certain places. If I can find one here, here's one here in Yorkshire, or one down here in the Midlands. But they're also going to be available on every port that is built by players in the game. So that's how you build things. You essentially choose what you want to build in an area, either play the card for that area or the appropriate industry card for an area that you're already connected to, pay the cost, and put your building out on the board. Coal comes with coal, iron comes with iron, shipyards flip immediately. Ports are waiting for cotton to be sent to them, and cotton are waiting to be sent to the ports. Now, the real goal of the game is to get these flipped over. So as I said, shipyards will flip immediately when you build one, and they're going to give you a couple of things. One, they're going to give you, for example, 10 victory points, as it says right here on this tile, but it's also going to increase your income by 2. So if I were to do this, I would move my income up 1, 2, and now I have an income of 1. And you'll see that this track will go up higher and higher throughout the game, which you can use to take loans later. You'll also notice that there are level 0 shipyards. Those can't be built, they must be developed away, which takes us to our second action, developing. To develop, you simply discard a card, any card you like, and you may remove 2 of these tiles from your board. So I can remove both of these unbuildable shipyards, or there are certain tiles that can't be built in the rail era for the level 1 buildings. I could remove some of those if we happen to get to the rail era to prevent me from having to do it later, or from having to build them earlier during the canal area, which I should have done. In order to do this, it is going to cost you some resources. You're going to have to pay iron in order to do this. So to do this, you must consume 1 iron for each card or for each one of these tiles you would like to consume, up to a maximum of 2. So for example, I could, discard my Liverpool card, pay my 2 iron, which I may have to buy from the distant market, and once I've done that, I could, for example, remove both of these tiles from the board. So if I have to buy that iron, you'll see that it would cost me 1 per iron for the first 2, 2 for the next 2, and all the way up to a maximum of 5 when this track is all the way empty. All right, so now we've talked about building and developing. There are 3 more actions that are possible here. The first is going to be building canals in the first era or rails in the second era. To build a canal, it's going to cost you $3 or £3 or whatever we happen to be dealing with in this case. So you would pay your money, as always, to your little portrait over here. And that's going to let you build a canal starting from somewhere that you're already at. So for example, I could build my canal from Wigan here to Liverpool or over to Bolton. And that's going to cost me $3. Now, each card here is only going to let me build 1 in the canal era, but in the rail era, I could build up to 2 for $15 and 2 coal, with rails always costing coal later in the game. This coal has to be accessible either from a distant market, so you have to be connected to a distant market somewhere with your canals, or rails in this case, or there has to be available on the board. So if we were in the rail era and I were building this rail, I could take one of the coal off of here to supply for that rail, along with my $5 and my card. All right, so that's 3 actions. The 4th action is going to be selling cotton, and that will happen when a player has cotton on the board somewhere that is connected to, let's just make up a scenario real quick, right here, and let's connect it via canal to Fleetwood here. All right, so let's say that our player had managed this situation. They decided they wanted to sell. They would discard any card they wanted, and they would flip 1 cotton for 1 port. And you can sell to anybody's ports, should they be your own or anybody else's, as long as they are unflipped, meaning they have the solid color side up, instead of the color with the black background. When these flip, you're going to, for the player whose tile they are, going to score the victory points. So 5 and 2 here for the purple player would be 7 victory points, and they would score that accordingly. And they're also going to get +3 and +5 income. So they would move up 8 on the income track, which, as you can see, moves them up to 5 income that they will get each round of the game. Now, these are now used. So the cotton is used and the port is used, but you'll see the port is still an access to the distant market. So if future players wanted to sell cotton, they could come over here and sell to the distant market by flipping this tile, moving it down the appropriate number, and taking the amount. It's important to remember that with this action, you can sell as many cotton to as many different locations as you want with one action, so long as they're connected via some type of route. Real quickly, one example I gave you earlier wouldn't have been possible. I built a canal right here to Bolton out of my city here, and there's no canal possible build there. So you'll look on the board that there are little blue lines and rails here to tell you where canals can be built versus where rails can be built. So just note that this one's not possible. Much like Ellesmere Port here to Birkenhead, there is no canal, so that's only available in the rail section of the game. Okay, so the last possible action you can do is to take a loan. So loans are very important in this game, and you'll see you're accumulating a little bit of money. You know, each round I may pick up 5. I started with 30, so maybe I can figure out some resource generation. It's possible that when I build coal or iron, that they'll automatically sell back if this market's not full. You can figure that out on your own, but there are ways to manipulate the building and immediate sell of all of the resources on the building to both get money and generate income and points. But really, at some point in the game, you're probably going to want to take a loan. And when you take a loan, you are going to drop back 1 full income level. So you'll see from 5 to 4 here is 2 steps per 10 pounds you would like to take. So if I would like to take 30 pounds, I could go 1, 2, 3 steps back, and I can take 30 pounds as my loan, with the maximum for a loan being 30. Once you've played your 2 cards and taken your 2 actions, you'll move on. With one exception, it is possible to play 2 cards, any 2 cards, for a wild action. So, you know, you'll play 2 cards no matter what. You'll take 1 or 2 actions with those 2 cards, and then you will move along to the next player's turn, going around the table until, as I said, you get to this card, which is called the Stevenson's Rocket card, and you will then play out the remaining cards in your hand until the end of a round. So at the end of an era, not a round, an era I should say, you're going to do some scoring and you're going to do some board changing, and I don't have much out here, but it'll be pretty clear what happens at the end of the round. The first is that you're going to score each of your canal links. So you'll see here, this canal has this little icon with little 2 dots on it on each side of it, twice, so 1, 2. So this is going to be a 2-point canal link. Now, if there had been more buildings here, let's say somebody else had built an ironworks and somebody else had built a port, it would have 2 more icons, so it would be a 4-point canal. And after you score them, you can take them off of the board. So you're going to score these points for each one of your canals, and then all canals are going to vanish. Additionally, you're going to score points, and technically I guess you shouldn't have scored these earlier. It doesn't really matter as long as you only score them once per era, but it doesn't matter. You're technically going to score these tiles now. So for example, this player would get 5 and 2 for 7 for these 2 buildings. After you've scored everybody's canals and you've scored everybody's buildings, you're going to pull these buildings off of the board. So you're going to take all of the level 1 industries. If they're level 1, they're going to come off of the board, they get destroyed, and they never score again for the rest of the game. So they score once, essentially. Level 2 and higher buildings. Level 2 and higher, so once you get up to the 2nd level here, or technically the 1st level or I guess the 3rd level for the ships here, those will stay around for the whole game. So if you manage to build them during the canal era, you're going to score them twice, once at the end of the canal era and once at the end of the rail era. So you'll remove all of the canals, all level 1 buildings, level 2s will stay, and only the flipped buildings will score. Then you're going to go ahead and you're going to shuffle this deck back up. You're going to reset the cotton market, and you're going to prepare for the second era, which is the rail era, where now you can build rails instead of canals along all of the rail spots. If there are any canal only, like Liverpool to Ellesmere Port here, you can't build those anymore. But essentially the second round is the same as the first round, played all the way through, with a different endpoint for this card here. So you'll have a round after this is drawn, after which you're no longer allowed to take loans, but you still continue to play the game. So it requires a little bit of planning. And then at the end of the game, you're going to do the same round of scoring. Now, one thing I didn't cover is why are we spending our money over here? And this is probably one of my favorite parts of the game, is that the amount of money you spend each round determines where you go in turn order. So once everybody's finished their round of taking 2 actions, 2 actions, 2 actions, 2 actions, so 8 actions have been taken, you'll look and see who spent the most money on their actions, and that player is going to go last. So whoever spent the least money on their turn, maybe they were taking a turn earning money, they're going to get to go first in the next round, where ties will see the player stay in the same order. So there's a lot of planning to be done in what resources you make available, both to yourself and to the other players, how much money you spend doing it, when you take money for loans, how you plan to keep points scoring from the first to the second eras, from canals to rails. And with all of that done, if you manage to score the most points over those 2 eras, you'll be the winner. Well, there it is. That's Brass Lancashire by Roxley Games and Martin Wallace. This game is still, for those of you that have followed me for a long time, still probably in my top 10 games of all time. Really an excellent game, one that I love playing all the time, and it's just great. So I don't want to go too much into that. What I really want to talk about here is the update in components and the minor rule tweaks that they've made to the game. So, one, how much better does that look than the old game? I mean, holy cow, it actually makes people want to play it from seeing it, which I think was one of the major drawbacks to the original Brass, is that it just looked unappealing. So, the art was not real wonderful. The card quality and component quality was kind of lacking, and so I found it a little hard to get to the table. And this new one is certainly not that hard, because people think it looks amazing, and it does. The cards are updated in a way that I think makes it easier to find the different locations on the board. I like the little cardboard insert for keeping track of when a round ends. I think that's really nice. I like that the virtual link is gone, although you can still play with the virtual link for those of you that don't know what I'm talking about. Go look it up. Just keeping track of money, the physical poker chips, everything here has been either tweaked for playability or tweaked for visual appeal, or just really, all in all, makes the game better. So if you've played the old version and you liked it, but it's hard to get to the table, or you're just a Brass fanatic and you really want the newest thing, definitely take a look at Brass Lancashire. I haven't played the other version, Birmingham, yet, but I have it, so keep your eyes open for that. We'll see how I like it. But if you're a Brass fan, this is a no-brainer. Go grab it. Wonderful game, and if you're not, this is the version to get if you're decided in trying it out. All right, we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye now.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com.